Buonamane. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me here today. I want to talk to you about my experiences and recollection about the death of Jesus, the one called Christos, the Christ. But a little bit about myself first. My name is Marcus Licinius. I am a centurion, commander of a troop of 100 elite soldiers in the Roman army. We centurions are chosen, some because of our money, but mostly because of our abilities to lead people and make good decisions in the moment. Did we have to be strong? Yes. Certainly I'm not as strong as I used to be. Tough? You've got to be tough to last in the Roman army, especially if you're going to lead. I served in many different areas and locations all around the Roman Empire. But one of the most challenging places was in Judea, and especially Jerusalem. The people in Judea were ready to revolt at the drop of a hat, and often they seemed to drop the hat themselves. They did not submit readily to the rule of Rome. We had several detachments that were stationed in Jerusalem, ready to quell any uprisings. And I'm here to tell you there were lots of uprisings, lots of rebellions against the rule of Rome. You had to be tough to hold the rule of Rome in Jerusalem. In time, we learned that the hard line was not always the most effective. To enforce Roman rule and discourage other rebellion, we often made examples of those captured in revolt. We crucified them by the dozens by the side of the road, at crossroads, or anywhere that would be seen by the most people. You had to have tough skin to carry out those crucifixions. This method of execution was designed to inflict the most punishment and agony for the longest period of time. Some particularly strong individuals would last for days hanging on the cross before they finally, mercifully died. So let me tell you, I've seen my share and more of crucifixions. I've participated in many of them. So when it came to this particular day, I was prepared. This day, there were 3 that were sentenced to hang on the cross. As centurion in charge for that day, I oversaw the executions. Those condemned were in my custody, so I witnessed what took place leading up to the crucifixions. 2 were known criminals, not much more than common thieves really, but they were sentenced to die. And then there was this one known as Jesus. I watched the sham of the trial before Pilate. I stood on the border of the room. Pilate was not much of a leader, I have to tell you. He was too power-hungry and at the same time too scared of the religious leaders in Jerusalem. He wanted power, so he did what he could to maintain favor with Rome. In order to do that, he had to maintain order in Jerusalem. And in order to maintain order in Jerusalem, you had to be on the good side of the religious leaders. His problem was he didn't listen to the right people. I saw and heard when his wife came in from the side and interrupted the proceedings to tell her husband that this man, Jesus, was innocent. Of course, Pilate didn't need her to tell him that. He saw Jesus, he questioned him, and yet he still sentenced him to die on the cross. As a last resort, Pilate brought out Barabbas. He was leader of yet another revolution, and he was a murderer. Pilate hoped that the people would choose Jesus over Barabbas. Jesus he deemed to be innocent, and he saw the treachery in Barabbas. But the religious leaders were not having any of it. They chose Barabbas to be set free, and as a result, they held their families tighter and posted guards at their homes. This man, Jesus, was sentenced to die by crucifixion. As was our custom, we took those condemned and we flogged them. And because people were calling him the King of the Jews, we dressed Jesus up as a king, making a crown of thorns for his head and putting a purple robe on him. Then we slapped him and mockingly bowed before him. And you know what he did? Nothing. He didn't flinch. He didn't react. He didn't cry out. When we got bored of that, then we took him off with the others to the place of crucifixion, Golgotha, the place of the skull. Condemned criminals were made to carry their own cross to the place of crucifixion. It was part of the drama designed to instill fear and bring about compliance in the people. Anyone who was carrying a cross, they knew was going to die. The two thieves carried their crosses, but this man Jesus was so weak by this point that he could not bear the weight. So he grabbed a passerby and made him carry the cross instead. No, we weren't going to do that. At the place of the skull, we nailed each criminal to their cross and roughly hoisted each cross into place. As we did this, I heard Jesus say, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Why would he say that? Why would he say something like that? I knew what I was doing. It was my job. With this done, and now all we had to do was wait. We divided up their clothes between us because, after all, they had no use for them anymore. And then we sat down to wait. Our job now was to ensure that no one tried to take the crucified people down from the crosses. We wouldn't allow anyone to interfere. There was a varied bunch of people who were gathered around. Religious leaders, some women who followed Jesus, and a man named John. Some cried for the crucified, mourning what was happening to them, but many jeered at Jesus. Why? I didn't understand it. I didn't see anything wrong in this man. The thieves cursed and shouted insults at us and at the crowd, but mainly they cursed at Jesus. But Jesus did not curse or cry out. One thing I noticed as well, he hung on the cross. His concern was for his mother. His disciple John was there, and he asked John to take care of his mother. These were not the words and actions of a man who was dying for his own sins. Pilate declared him innocent. I judged him innocent based on my observations of him in just a few hours. He didn't curse me or the other soldiers. He prayed for us while we nailed him to the cross. I had time to think as we idled away the time throughout that day. I remembered a fellow centurion telling me of his interaction with Jesus a few months before. He went to Jesus asking for his servant to be healed, but he didn't want to trouble this man Jesus. He said he commanded those under him and asked Jesus to simply say the word, and his servant would be healed. Jesus commended him for his faith and spoke the word, and the centurion's servant, would you know it, was healed right at that moment. Surely a man who could do that did not deserve to die on the cross as a common criminal. There was something more that was going on here. The hours of the day dragged on. People continually shouted insults at Jesus. You claim to be the Son of God. Come down from the cross. Let me tell you, no one came down from a Roman cross. When we nailed them to the cross, the only way they came down was when we took them down dead. We made sure of it. About noon, everything began to go dark. It was like it was late evening. It was eerie. People were frightened. I wasn't sure what to make of it all. And this period of darkness lasted for about 3 hours. Then Jesus, hanging on the cross, called out, Tetelestai means it is finished. And then at that moment he seemed to slump down and he died. Just like that. It was like he chose the moment to die. And at that very moment, as he died, the earth began to shake, and the curtain in the Jewish temple tore in two from top to bottom, and chaos ensued in the city around us. Yet I stayed by the crosses because that was my station. The Jewish religious leaders, they wanted the crucifixions to be over quickly. The Sabbath was approaching and didn't want anything interfering with the Sabbath. So I directed the soldiers to break the legs of those hanging on the crosses in order to hasten their deaths. And so they broke the legs of this one, broke the legs of this one. And then they came to Jesus hanging on the middle cross. They found that he was already dead. I knew that already. I'd watched him die. Before I could say anything, one of the soldiers thrust his spear into his side, and piercing his heart, blood and water flowed out. He was just making sure he was actually dead. There was no hurry now. Nothing to do until we were given further instructions, further orders. And I took advantage of a few moments of time and reflected on what I observed that day. What did I know? I knew that Jesus was innocent, crucified not for his own sins. His death came of his own will. I was sure of it. I saw it. I knew he was a righteous man. And after a moment of reflection, in a moment of inspiration, I exclaimed, this man was the Son of God. This man was the Son of God. Let me tell you, I didn't understand it all that day. But I knew I was changed by my encounter with Jesus. Even though I was the one responsible for nailing him to the cross, I was changed. In time, as I became part of the early church, I learned the significance of Jesus' death. He didn't die because of the religious leaders. He didn't die because Pilate sentenced him to die. He didn't die because I nailed him to the cross. He died because he laid down his life. He laid it down for you and for me. Let me tell you, friends, my life has never been the same since. And you can have a life-changing experience with this Jesus, this Son of God, Savior of the world, who gave his life on a Roman cross for the sins of the world, yours and mine included. God bless you.